Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of FFC&Me. I'm your host, Ash Wolford. On this week's episode, I am absolutely delighted to have been joined by the Philadelphia Supporters Group's founder in TJ. TJ was great to chat to. It was really interesting to speak to someone who followed the club over here in London and then has continued to do so after moving back to the States. And it was real interesting to obviously talk about the upcoming game against Brentford that's going to happen in Philadelphia later on in the summer in preparation for next season, as well as hearing his stories about following the club over here. He has a real good set of top threes, and he has probably one of my favorite entrants into the Cult Hero Hall of Fame. So I really hope you guys enjoy that. On a side note to that, again, I know I say it every single week, we've had some really, really great growth in the show the last couple of weeks. I'm really pleased that you guys are sharing it and we're starting to reach a lot of people. We're averaging at around about 150 views per episode on YouTube, which is great. I'd still like it to grow a bit more. But what I'd really like to push everyone to do is subscribe to the channel. If you listen to the show or watch the show every single week, please do subscribe to the channel because it really, really helps us grow and to reach more people. So it's really, really good. Um, I also want to shout out the two supporters groups in the US other than the Philly group. I want to get hold of the guys over in DC and some of the guys down in Florida to come on the show. It's not the first time I've done this shout out. But if you are available and want to come on the show, please do send us a message on Twitter. And lastly, I had a few people message me with questions and stuff on Twitter, stuff they want me to answer and talk about. So what I've done is I've created a special new email address for the show, which is FFC&Me, spelled as the words FFC&, me at gmail.com. If you have any questions for me or questions you want me to ask people coming on the show, please do feel free to send us in your questions and we'll go through them and we'll discuss. We do have some specials coming up in a couple of weeks that these might go towards. And if you're interested in coming in the show, be that a UK-based fan or an international-based fan, please do get in contact via the email or on Twitter, and we'll get you on. And lastly, before I send you over to listen to TJ, I would just like to say that the last couple of weeks we've had some real good interaction on the show. And please, guys, keep it up because it is really pushing us to get where we want to be. And I'm just really thankful for it. So enjoy this week's episode, and hopefully we'll speak soon. Thank you. Hi, TJ. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Tell us a bit about yourself, mate.
So my name's TJ. I am a 25-year-old Fulham fan from Philadelphia. Um, yeah, I have been supporting Fulham for about almost 2 decades now, since 2005, um, since I was 7 years old, and yeah, it's been a wild journey the last 20 or so years as a Fulham fan, especially in the United States for the last decade or so of that.
And how did you sort of start becoming a Fulham fan? How did your Fulham journey begin?
Yes, so I moved to London in 2004 from the Philadelphia area, and my mom was not that much into soccer, football, any kinds of sports, but my dad was. And when he was like looking at places to take us to, one of his bosses at work said, whatever you do, don't be like every other American that moves to London and starts supporting Chelsea. So he found the team up the road that was fortunate enough because we used to live in Putney then. So it was pretty walking distance from our house. We used to walk there on match days through Bishop's Park. And yeah, and so we started watching Fulham and going to Fulham matches. But he had all sorts of rules, like we couldn't go to the night games and we um, couldn't go to any games where we had school the next day, uh, or at least the night games we had school the next day. I'm sure we watched some Sunday afternoon games, but Yeah, and then it was just from there. It was just like he tried to get me into a lot of American players that were at the club at the time, since I was an American going to school in London. And I had gone to an all British school at the time. Like it wasn't the American school in London; it was something else. So it was just like cool to be able to see different players. Like at the time I started following, there was Brian McBride and Carlos Bocanegra, but then Casey Keller would join, Clint Dempsey would join, and a few more along the years. So yeah, it was since then. And my dad also loves to joke about the £5 ticket deal being the only cheap price in London for juniors. And so that's why he was able to get my brother and I in. And so yeah, that's how we just started following the club. And since we moved back, I've been trying to watch them ever since. Uh, there was a period between 2008 when I moved back and 2014 where it was just really difficult to follow the club, since they're like a smaller club, and since since uh, like the only a few channels in America cared about soccer, uh, or football, if you say it. Uh, yeah, so. Uh, since 2014, America got a lot more of the channels. NBC has been covering them, and FFC TV's done a good job for international supporters. But yeah, it's been good for the last 5 or so years with all the promotions happening. Not so good with the relegations, but this season's been a good ride as well.
Yeah, I think I've had some experience of trying to watch Fulham while being in America. Usually, holidays and stuff like that. The opening game of this season, I was in Florida, so I sort of know what it was like trying to sort of keep up with a game when you don't. But what I will say is that some of the coverage you guys get is actually better than what we get over here on a match day. So so now it is. I know it was quite hard, especially when we were sort of yo-yoing down and coming up again. It was quite hard to stay connected and stuff like that. When we were in the championship, how did you sort of keep up with the club? Because I know that championship football doesn't really get any airtime in the States. So how did that work for you?
Yeah, so the first season that Premier League coverage was available, every match was streamed or on television, was 2013-14, and that was the season we went down. So after that, I turned to FFC TV and like the Fulham club resources and things like that. I remember back then they had free commentary, so I could listen to Gentleman Jim. And around then, I think Sean Davis was his co-commentator before Jamie took over. Uh, so I listened to them for a while, and then they put the commentary behind a paywall, so that got a little bit more difficult. But I found a couple streaming services in America, like ESPN, that offered championship football. And then last few seasons, I've been fortunate enough to get a good job out of college that I can afford the ever increasing price of FFC TV when they stream all the games. So I think last season I only missed two, and it's funny because I would like have I would be at work and just have on one of my monitors the game playing, and I've just been like typing away, and then like the seventh goal goes in, and I have to contain myself while like two or three people next to me are trying to focus on what they're doing as well. Uh, but yeah, it's gotten a lot easier over the past 5 years. But I followed the Europa League run through what my dad found out online. So that was a little difficult to do. It was like, oh, cool, we're in the final, and then like a few days later we lost, and it was just yeah. I wasn't able to like watch any of the games because the Europa League was in its like first or second year, so it was certainly not being taken as seriously as some of the other games or tournaments or competitions that are in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll go back a bit. Obviously, talking about living in Putney and sort of starting to follow the club that way. They are both. You said you went to games with your brother and your dad. Are both your brother and your dad still sort of following Fulham as sort of as much as you are, or is it not so much for them?
Oh, my dad's definitely following Fulham as much as I am. Yeah, he and I talk. We text every game that happens. Uh, I'm trying to get him to come into the city to watch a match with me. So hopefully that happens sooner rather than later. My brother is a little bit of a different story. I think he's got a lot going on right now. He's in his final year of university, so I don't think he's giving as much attention. But he always likes hearing about good things happening at the club. Um, he found it really funny that they hit 3-7 nils last year. Uh, yeah, but I don't think he follows as closely as the rest of us.
Yeah. So we'll go back to obviously when how old were you when you sort of first started going to games again?
So my first match was in January of 2005. So I was 7 years old then. It was
Okay.
a
Okay.
1-0 win against West Brom.
Okay. Right. So that was obviously what that year was, as you say, it was a Brian McBride Bocanegra year.
Yeah.
So I can see why that would influence you as an American to come in. Did that sort of help having American representation on the pitch coming in to watch the club, or was it just more of a case of it was an added bonus to have Americans playing for the club?
Um, it was in the beginning. I think it was an added bonus to have Americans playing because my first favorite player was actually Edwin van der Sar. Because I played goalie back in or goalkeeper back in the day, um, for my school and my club back then. But yeah, when he left for Man United, I was like, McBride's pretty amazing. Bocanegra's pretty amazing. It's good to have like Americans plying their trade at the highest level, and it's good to support a club that has that kind of representation.
Yeah, I get that because one of the things that I always find quite interesting is especially people that come as new fans to Fulham. Obviously, there's been a lot of controversy the last couple of weeks around ticket prices and season ticket prices and stuff like that. And you said that uh, your dad used to joke about Fulham being one of the cheapest things or a fiver that you could do to come and watch it. Would you say that uh, the match prices are one of the things that sort of enticed your family, like your dad, to bring you as kids along as well? Or if for instance it was slightly more expensive, would he have only gone by himself, or was it always going to be something that he planned on doing with you and your brother?
I think match prices certainly helped, but I think if he was going to go to a match, he would have definitely taken my brother and I because I don't think my mom was going to let him have fun for a couple hours every Saturday without any responsibility and without having to take my little brother and I along.
Yeah, no, the only reason why I asked, obviously, I tried to be very positive on this podcast, and show we like to sort of keep things quite lighthearted, but obviously ticket prices is quite a controversial issue we have at the club at the moment, and what I always like to just trying to ascertain whether or not it's one of those things that may have stopped people becoming fans in the first place. For me, it's a bit different. I'm fifth, sixth generation Fulham fan, so I almost didn't have a choice growing up of what football team I supported.
Mhm.
But for someone like yourself, who, although local, that could have had a major influence on you and what football club you used to support. So
Yeah, I certainly think the ticket prices helped us attend more games. Definitely, my dad is one of those people that's very conscious about how he spends money, and so when he saw like he could get my brother and I into the football for a fiver each, he definitely was like, "Well, that sounds like a great way to spend a weekend afternoon. Let's go do that."
yeah, cool. We'll go back a bit to obviously we'll talk about now. You obviously you're part of the Philadelphia supporters group. That's how we sort of got in contact in the first place. Anyway, tell us a bit about the group, sort of how you got started, where you meet, and if anyone's listening who lives in the Philadelphia area who maybe not part of the group, why they should come and join.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a part of we call it Fulham, but we spell it with a PH instead of an F at the beginning, just for Philadelphia. So we are a relatively new supporters group. We only got started last October, November. Back then, the Premier League was partnering with NBC, the local broadcast channel, to do a Premier League fan fest where they just booked out a small park and put up giant TV screens everywhere and got the broadcasters to do a live broadcast in front of everybody. And so I went there by myself, and I think we found around a dozen to 20 people who are also supporting Fulham there, and that was for the Bournemouth match. So we watched that. By the time they'd gotten our matchup, I think Solanke had already scored and made it 1-0 because he scored pretty early on, and they were having a little bit of technical difficulties. But we were able to find each other and find one screen to watch it on, and it was fun because you got the Bournemouth supporters on the other side and us on our one side of the screen, and we're just like chatting between the two of us. Um, so that was a lot of fun. And then from there, we got a picture, and then people on the Fulham side were like, we should do this again. So one of our guys got everyone's emails and started an email thread just being like, hey, you want to watch the match today? And then we're all like, yeah, sure, let's go do it. And so originally we hung out at a bar every match in Old City, Philadelphia, but now we're more in Center City. We're at a bar called Jose Pistolas, and that is available for pretty much every match. I can only attend the ones on weekends, but every weekend match that's not at I believe 12:30 is the UK time, but in Philadelphia it's 7:30. So that's a bit early for the bars to be opening. So this weekend I'm just watching it by myself. But yeah, going forward, every weekend match I plan on attend. And some of the weekday matches, we had a few people in from London about a month ago, and they hung out at the bar for one of our Wednesday matches. Again, it's at Jose Pistolas on 15th Street. If there's anyone in Philadelphia listening that wants to know where to go for a Fulham match.
Obviously, you're on social media as well. What's
Yes.
your social media handles?
So on Twitter, you can find us at Fulham. That's PHULHAM. And on Facebook, we are, I believe the page is called Fulham in Philadelphia. Let me pull it up real quick. Sorry. The page is called Fulham, spelled again with a PH, and it's Fulham in Philadelphia is the Facebook page, and there we'll post every event that we're having, whether it be meetup for a match or any sort of events that are happening for the upcoming match this summer.
See, you just mentioned it. There must be a great deal of excitement for yourself and the rest of the guys that are in the group because Fulham are coming to Philadelphia and we're going to play a game in pre-season. What was that like for you and the rest of the guys to sort of find out that Fulham are coming over to play a game in your hometown?
That was It was absolutely crazy for the day that it got announced because the day before we were scheduled to like replace Leeds for the tournament, and I was looking on the Athletic article where they mentioned that we were replacing Leeds, and so they mentioned that it was going to be a whole host of East Coast cities in the Eastern time zone. So I just figured we're going to end up playing a few matches in Jacksonville because that's where Shad Khan Stadium is. But yeah, then the day after comes and the announcement comes, and actually 2 minutes before like the Premier League did their whole announcement, I tweeted from our account, "Let's make it happen." It was just a picture of João Palhinha at Lincoln Financial Field, the stadium in Philadelphia. And then like 5 minutes later, they announced that they're playing there. So that was I found that funny, and then everything just started blowing up. Like our group chat's like, oh my god, they're coming here. We gotta like go into full gear. We gotta like figure out the tailgates. We gotta do this and that. And we're still in the planning stages for everything, but everybody is through the roof, over the moon, however you want to say it. We're all so excited that Fulham's coming out here this summer.
Yeah, so obviously you said you're planning some stuff that you're planning on doing. If there's any like UK-based Fulham fans that are planning on sort of coming out and doing the pre-season tour. We often have fans that regularly do pre-season tours, and they're planning on coming to Philadelphia. They should probably keep an eye on your social media to see anything that you guys might be planning, and obviously meet up with I'd say local Fulham fans, because you would be the local Fulham fans for the day, I guess. And suggest that you guys are planning some events, right?
Yeah, so there will definitely be something before the match. We're just not sure if it'll be like an official Premier League event or if it's just the dozen of us that are part of the local supporters group in a parking lot with drinks and things like cornhole and different party games that we can play and music and stuff like that. But there will definitely be something before the game. There will probably be something after the game as well. The game, the stadium has a whole lot of parking, so if you have a car, uh, you shouldn't have a problem parking there because that's the only event for the day. And if you don't have a car, the stadium is also accessible by the train. If you're getting there, just use the Broad Street line. It's the last stop. Also, if you have any other questions and you're not on social media, out the two places that I mentioned before, you can always email us at Fulham Philadelphia. That's Fulham with an F this time. FULHAM Philadelphia at gmail.com. And we will definitely respond to those emails as well.
That's excellent. And obviously, it's an open invite to yourself now. We have previously discussed it off air. I am still trying to find some representatives in DC and a couple of people in Florida to have similar chats like this with, and and sort of get to know them. But we will be hosting a special for FFC&Me a couple of weeks before the games are due to happen in America. That we want to have a few of you guys on, just to sort of get the buzz, find out any sort of final plans you have that are going on. So, it's an open invitation really for you guys to come back on to get to speak about it, because it'll be quite fun, I think, to talk about coming to see, having like local fans coming with the club coming towards them. So, hopefully you guys will be available to come back onto that particular episode.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We plan on doing that.
Cool. We'll go back to getting to know you a bit better, because we always love getting to know the people that we speak to and we get coming in. A normal match day routine for yourself, and I know this is really hard, especially when you have a time difference. And as you say, this week's game is a 12:30 kickoff our time, which is 7:30 in the morning your time, so you can't do your usual routine. But if it was a Saturday 3 o'clock kickoff, what would be your normal sort of routine around sort of watching the games?
Yeah, so for a Saturday 3 o'clock, that's the Saturdays at 10 a.m. here. So usually on Saturdays at 10 a.m., not a lot I do between waking up and going to the bar, but I just pick out whatever Fulham shirt that I want to wear that day, making sure I walk my dog, everything's in order, and then I drive down to Center City because I'm a little bit outside of there right now, and meet up with the guys at the bar we talked about earlier, Jose Pistolas. And it's a great time. They open for us on Saturdays because they usually open at 11, so we're the first people there for the first half at least. And every time Fulham scores, they have a bell that they ring, which we've been hearing a lot more of that this year than recent Premier League seasons. So that's always good.
That's cool. So, yeah, that's really cool. I'm glad you guys sort of have a meeting place for it. How many guys do you sort of regularly get down there watching games?
We usually have between 5 and 10 guys. This past week at Everton, I think, or yeah, against Everton at Goodison, we had 5 guys here, and one of the guys brought his son, who was an Everton supporter, which was really funny. Because then the dad booed his son out of the bar after they lost. um, yeah, all in good fun though. But we usually get between 5 and 10 people every time. The more the merrier. So if you're in the Philadelphia area, please come and hang out with us. It's a good time. Everyone there is a great person, and we all have a good time, even when Fulham don't win.
That's good. That's good to hear. One of my favorite questions I always like asking people. I know you obviously you have like 5 or 6 guys, that's 5 to 10 guys who come regularly to watch the games, but I always love to ask people where is the strangest place you bumped into another Fulham fan. So I'd love to know where is the strangest place you've ever bumped into another Fulham fan.
So I've got 2 places in mind for this question. The first one was either last autumn or the one previous. The local team here is called the Philadelphia Union in MLS, and so I go to their games as well because watching live football is a lot of fun. And so I was at one of their matches in the playoffs. So usually everyone's like got their Philadelphia Union gear on, their scarves and whatnot. And someone walks up in the aisle past me, and he's wearing like a white Fulham top, and I was like, "Come on, Fulham!" And he's like, "Up the Fulham," and keeps walking to his seat. And so I thought that was really strange to see someone in a Fulham shirt there. Another time when I was in holiday in Prague, like 15 years ago, um, we found this one of these vendors that sells souvenirs for tourists, and he was selling a Russian nesting doll of Fulham players. So at the back was like the outer doll was Thomas Radzinski, and then as you keep going in, you got players like McBride, Zat Knight, um, Van der Sar, and those kinds of people. I think Moritz Volz was also in there. Um, but yeah, and he said he was a Fulham supporter. That's why he made the doll, because he had ones for like all of the big clubs. He had several for all of the big clubs, but there was one for Fulham, and they had like the dabs.com kits on, and that was really funny, and it was cool to see that happen there.
Was it in that order? Because it seems like he's actually made the players, shortest to biggest, and made like the tallest player the center of the Russian doll rather than the big player right at the end.
I don't think it was that order specifically. I do know Radzinski was on the outside, but I
Yeah,
can't.
I just love the idea that 5'6" Thomas Radzinski
Yeah,
has got 6'3" Edwin van der Sar inside of him. That's it just makes me laugh.
yeah.
Um, that's kind of cool. I always love it, especially holiday and tourist places is always really strange place to bump into to people. I'd say I regularly have been to the US a few times on holiday, family holidays. We were in Florida this year for family holiday, and I bumped into Fulham fans all over the place. Not even British ones. You very regularly bump into like English like Fulham fans in places, but I was bumping into American Fulham fans when I was on holiday. And actually, a couple of years ago, one of the funniest stories I have about being a Fulham fan is I was walking. We were in Vegas for my 30th birthday, and it was actually it was the day that we played Tottenham, and I think like Harry Winks scored like a last minute winner for Tottenham,
Hmm.
and it was my 30th birthday, and we were walking into the lobby of the hotel because we watched it in our hotel room because it wasn't on in the hotel we were in. And as we turned the corner and we were going to Starbucks to grab a coffee, like 3 other Fulham fans walked out, but they were all sort of Vegas locals. And I was really annoyed that I didn't sort of bump into them like the day before because I could have found someone to watch the game that wasn't in my hotel room in Spanish. But
Yeah.
it was that's always cool. Um, my other favorite question I always like to ask people, especially in the getting to know you section, is about superstitions and about if you have any match day superstitions. If you do, what they are. Yeah, do you have any sort of match day superstitions?
So I used to have one where I would wear the same kit or just the shirt to every game until they lost, and then I would switch it and start a new streak going. But that was really hard to keep going and keep track of, and so I don't really have any superstitions at this point. And I feel like the superstitions that I used to have just start stressing me out a lot, so I just try to stay away from more things that can stress me out.
Yeah, I get it. I don't. I only have one superstition. Spoke about it before on the channel. Is that I don't. I've never worn match shirts to games.
Okay.
I did it one time when we were a kid and we lost 5-0, so I sort of refused to do it. So even now as an adult, I don't wear anything Fulham on a match day. I refuse to, other than maybe a cap, but I won't wear anything else. So I get that.
Yeah.
The reason I love asking that question is I always find that with people, especially superstitious, even people that say they're not superstitious, will always have something slightly different they do on a match day. Even if it's like people that go to games will have like a certain turnstile they have to go through when they go into the game
Yeah.
or stuff like that. So I always like asking that question. Um, we're gonna move on to the next section of the show, which is obviously your top threes.
Hmm.
Now, uh, anyone who's not watched the show, listened to the show before, top threes are completely individual. So there's no right, there's no wrong answers. So this is a great discussion piece we often have when people get messaging into the show or they like chatting about the show on YouTube. These are usually the things that people like to talk about. So there's no right or wrong answers, but we'll go through your top threes. Um, TJ, what are your top three favorite Fulham goals?
Yeah. Um, so I've got three. Um, Only two of them I've seen while they happened, and only one of them I've seen live. But in third place, I'm going for the one with neither, and that was just one of the most iconic goals in the club's history, Dempsey against Juventus. It's just such a good finish. He's an American, so I have to represent. It it was just completed the one of the most improbable comebacks of all time. Um, yeah, I've watched that goal back hundreds and hundreds of times ever since I saw it for the first time, maybe a few days after it happened. But yeah, it's just every time it gets mentioned, it's just such a good goal, and I feel like some people may think it's overused as like one of the top Fulham goals of all time, but that's just because it's so good. Like the moment, the quality of the finish, everything combines to make it such a good strike. Yeah. So then, the best goal I've seen live, number two, in my opinion, was Jimmy Bullard's free kick against Aston Villa in 2008. So that was back when we were struggling. It was Roy Hodgson's first win was that game against Villa, and so I remember going up to the game. Aston Villa were billed as these like dead ball set piece specialists that had scored a lot from corners, kind of like we're doing this season. And so it was just I found it funny, and I've already always like had this funny thing in my head that they were billed as like the set piece specialists, and we beat them off of a set piece. And the way he hit it, and I was right behind the goal because we used to have seats. Our seats were behind the goal in the hammy end, um, and so that's where he hit it. And so like we watched it go in like over the wall and stuff, and that was just it was just really good goal to see. Um, Yeah, and so yeah, and moving on to my number one goal, we've got Paitim Kasami against Crystal Palace, and that's got to be the best goal in Premier League history, maybe even like the history of the sport. It's just so good. He takes it off his chest, running away from the goal with his weaker foot into the top corner. That was one of the matches that I was able to see live of Fulham. I remember it was after school on a Monday, and I just went into the basement, put the TV on, watched the game. I remember Crystal Palace scored first with Mariappa, and then Kasami went and did that. And I actually paused the TV, went upstairs, and got my sister and brought her down, and was like, "Look at this! Look at this goal! It's just so good." Um, and so like I watched it back like 3 or 4 times, and it was just so good. And then like I catch up to real time, and then Sidwell does the Sidwell goal, which is a great goal, but doesn't make my top three. And I pause it again, bring my sister downstairs again, and at this point she was getting a little bit fed up. But yeah, that was two great strikes in the same game. But Kasami's against Palace is just like one of the best goals I've ever seen from any team, let alone Fulham.
I'll go through them. Obviously, I love to sort of break these goals down. The Clint Dempsey goal is without doubt one of the there's two Fulham goals that I have the same memory, right? Of it taking about 5.5 years to go in after the player has hit the shot. There's Diamante Kamara scored a bicycle kick against
Hmm.
Tottenham. That in the last minute of the game, that after he hit it, looped and felt like it took about 7 years to go in. But this Dempsey goal, I spoke about it on the show before. When he chipped the ball, I was sat behind that goal, in line with the post that he was aiming at. Right, it felt like it took about 5.5 years to go in. I aged waiting for that goal to go in. And I think that if it wasn't such a special night and it wasn't such a, the atmosphere was astonishing that
Hmm.
game at the Cottage. It was just unbelievable. I think if a bigger name had scored the goal, it would get spoke about way more often than it does. But that game just had everything. When you think about it, Clint Dempsey didn't start the game.
Hmm.
Obviously, had managed to cut his hand quite badly after punching a pane of glass in the changing room after getting told he wasn't playing. So he
Hmm.
came on and he sort of that last sort of 15 minutes of the game, he really sort of took it by the scruff of the neck. So
Yeah.
the score of the goal he did was absolutely amazing. To score a goal against Juventus as well,
Yeah,
who again
absolutely.
I spoke about in the past. An Italian team that I have a little bit of an affiliation with. And I love Juventus. They are a European giant. So to score a goal like that against them was absolutely amazing. The Jimmy Bullard free kick against Aston Villa, he scored a few free kicks, sort of, for Fulham. It's not my favourite Fulham free kick I've seen him score, but it is one of those ones. Say it was Roy Hodgson's first win as Fulham manager. It
Yeah.
was one of those. I do remember going into the game and being very much aware of how much everyone was sort of rating Aston Villa being really good at set pieces, and we hadn't really seen Jimmy Bullard score a free kick for Fulham at that point. And I do remember the free kick was very well hit, and it was uh, it was a really really good goal. And to get Roy Hodgson going as a manager, that makes it even more special.
Um,
Um, but obviously, the Patrick Kasami goal it's up there. It is the best goal I've ever seen live.
yeah.
And you may or may not know if you're listening to the show, I'm a Fulham fan who lives in Croydon.
Hmm.
So almost both of my neighbours on both sides of my house are Palace fans. My daughter goes to school with a load of Palace fans. At the time, I was living with my mother and father-in-law who they live in Woodside, which is literally a 5-minute walk away from Selhurst Park. So I was there with an awful lot of people. I took a load of people that I was at work with to the game, like 3 or 4 people who I worked with, and they weren't Fulham fans, but they celebrated that goal like they just seen their own team score because of how good it was. And the biggest tragedy of that goal is the Steve Sidwell goal and the fact that it doesn't get the airtime and the talk time that it probably deserves because of how good Patrick Kasami's goal is. And I think
Hmm.
the thing is with Kasami is he was one of those players. He had a lot of promise, and we were already hoping that he was going to be, a really, really good player. So to see him score a goal like that was absolutely astonishing. I absolutely loved him. I think that it is one of those goals that even today it gets tweeted out once or twice a year, usually from the Premier League account, saying it's a good goal. But it's another one of those goals that, if it was scored by a Man United player or scored by a Liverpool player, it would be easily considered the greatest goal in Premier League history. But because it was only a Fulham player who scored it, it does not get the credit it deserves.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember it didn't even win goal of the week or something like that, or goal of the month, because
No,
Arsenal the
it
same
didn't get
like
goal of
the
the
day
month.
before scored
Yeah,
like a bunch of 1-2 passes, and I think Ramsey finished it off against Norwich, and so that won like goal of the month. But I've been that's been living in my head rent free. It was just like the fact that it didn't even win goal of the month that month. It's just such a great goal, such a great finish.
yeah. I think it might have even been nominated for a Puskas Awards. I think it was one of those ones that was in
Hmm.
like the top 20 goals in Europe. But it was like, how could a goal be considered for a Puskas but not win goal of the month? It's just ridiculous. But
Yeah.
it unfortunately it is what it is with that goal. And anyone who was lucky to see it live will tell you it was just astonishing to see it live. And anyone who watched it on TV probably would tell you the same thing. It was just pure magic.
Yeah.
Um, we'll go on to your next set of top threes, which is your top three favorite Fulham kits. Just to be just to make it clear on this one, because I've had a few people message in about this sort of top three kits. It's nothing. It's all personal choice. It's nothing to do about if they're kits that we're winning. It's nothing to do about what the kits look like. They could be kits that you favour because they were your first kit because you love them. It's just about personal preference. But TJ, we'll go back to you, mate. What are your top three favourite Fulham kits?
Um, so I took this one a bit more personal to me because I know a few things. I know I don't have the best design choice. I don't have the best fashion sense. So I just picked three Fulham kits that kind of meant something to me. As you can tell, that I don't have the best Fulham sense because I'm wearing the black Fulham kit right now with the orange trim. So I may not have the best judge of what the best Fulham kits are, but these are my three favorite Fulham kits. Um, so the first one I'd like to do is this is kind of my third place one was the 2015-16 home kit, the black collar one with a Visit Florida sponsor over it. Um, I just think that one, number one, it was really comfortable as opposed to some of like the more recent kits. I just like that color combination. And I know the numbers on the back were a little bit not great, but I like just how plain it looked and how simple but like elegant the design was. Uh, I still have that one, and I still like go out and play Sunday League in it sometimes. But yeah, it's just I have Ross McCormick on the back of that one for me. But yeah, that was my one of my favorite home kits that we've ever worn was just the plain white top with a black collar and very like not the best sponsor to fit in, but definitely didn't take too much away from the design in my opinion. Yeah, so then the second one, my second favorite kit is the 2012-13 third kit, the black one with the white and gold stripe. Uh, I like that one for a few reasons. I usually liked a lot of our third kits that weren't like yellow or green, or something like that. Um, so yeah, I'm a big fan of like our black, blue, and red away kits. Uh, and this one, like the sponsor was really small on it, so you could just focus a lot on the design, and the sash on it also just made it look incredible. Um, and finally, my first favorite. This was one of my first kits, and I think one of the only ones that made it across, back across when we left London, and I still have it in my room right now. Is the 2007-2008 away kit. I have it long sleeve, and it's the black and red striped LG kit, and I just think that one, like the black and red stripes. I know it's been said a couple times here, but black and red stripes are definitely like our best look for an away kit. Um, yeah, that one is my favorite, and the sponsor looks good on it as well. It doesn't take any too much away from it. Um, yeah, those would be my top three kits.
Yeah, I think I do like all three of those kits, and the home kits for me. I have three simple rules for me to me to like Fulham kits, right? Home kits, I like plain. I like white, a little bit of black, a little bit of red maybe on a collar, but I like very plain, simple Fulham kits. Like white kits are always the whiter, the plainer they are, the better they look for me. And it may just be, when I started watching Fulham when I was a kid, we didn't even have sponsors. We were not good enough to be given sponsors, until we started getting GMB. So I do really like those playing kits. Now the Visit Florida kit is actually one I really like that kit. It wasn't necessarily we didn't necessarily play the greatest football in that kit, but at least we looked good while we did it. Um, the away kit with the sash on it. It was the LG sort of small sponsor, wasn't it? That was sort of
I think it was FX
that
Pro
one.
was small sponsor
Oh,
right under the
FX Pro. That's
badge.
right. Yeah, yeah. That's right. Yeah. Sorry, my mistake. Yeah, the FX Pro one. I really love that kit for that reason. It was the fact that the sponsorship was made really really small, and the kit was left sort of kind of plain, and they let the design of the kit almost do the talking on that shirt. So it's actually a really nice kit. It doesn't really get spoke about quite a lot by fans. It's not one that
Mhm.
I've mentioned before, but I do really like that kit. And I always sort of remember like Berbatov and Kakarniklic playing in that kit, and I really do sort of really like that kit. The black and red striped Fulham kit. You said it yourself. I've said it 100 times on the show before. I'm a traditionalist Fulham fan. I love black and red striped Fulham away kits. I almost wish that we did them more often than we physically do.
Mhm.
And I love those kits. You know, it's not quite up there for me as the Pizza Hut black and red. That was quite like bulky stripes, but
Yeah.
it definitely is up there. I really do like that kit, and I think that it's one of those ones we didn't wear it that often that season, if I recall. But I really wish we did because I really like that
Mhm.
kit. Um, so they're actually really good choices in terms of kit. You haven't gone too out there in terms of design,
Okay, good.
and I'm thankful that I'm thankful you're not somebody who's also gone for like the green and gold
Oh,
kit, because that's not one that I like. So we'll
I
go from there.
I did used to have
Um,
that kit before it fell apart on me. But yeah, it had really stretchy fabric to it that just wasn't like didn't feel like a kit. And I would also like to add one more thing that I looked up the kit history, like just to refresh my memory before the show, and I saw that they had this season's kit, the home kit with the Fulham FC Foundation. And I think if that was the sponsor at this season's kit, I think it would look so much better than W88. Like if we were able to purchase that, and that would probably
yeah,
be in my top three. Sorry.
it's a touchy subject, right?
Yeah.
Sponsorships have always been a touchy subject on football kits, and I am one of those people that I'm quite staunchly in the I don't like gambling companies sponsoring football shirts. But I'm on when I was a kid, you know, they weren't that wasn't an issue.
Hmm.
We never had gambling things, and sadly, we are the club that bought gambling sponsors in. You know, we were the first team to do it, so we can't really talk and moan about it too much. But I don't like it. One of the reasons why I don't like it now is I'm a parent, and I
Hmm.
have kids that want football shirts, football clubs don't realize it, but you know, kids do realize that the shirts on there they have don't have sponsors on or have wrong sponsors,
Hmm.
and it and it sort of takes it away some of the special feeling for them for those kits, because they're not wearing the kits that you know their Fulham heroes are wearing.
Yeah.
So I agree with that, and if I do think that if the club made the foundation available on shirts, that they would sell a lot more and it'd be liked a lot more.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the next section in the top three, which is obviously your top three favorite Fulham games. So TJ, take us through what are your top three favorite Fulham games.
Okay, so I wasn't sure because one of the most recent episodes of the show that I listened to was the first one actually that you did with Sammy, and so I wasn't sure if this was games that I attended or just games in general. So I did games that I attended. So this is going to take people back probably around 15 or so years. So bear with me. So in third, I have when we beat United 3-0. Um, I forget exactly what year that was. I think maybe 2006 or something like that. I might even be after my time, and I just might be misremembering it completely. But um,
Is that the one where Paul Scholes was sent off for
I think so.
handball in the ball?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was really good to see. Just everybody beat United 3-0. Like you don't get to say that a lot if you're a club like Fulham, but um, yeah, it was certainly like wins against United are definitely memorable. They're definitely good good memories, and especially a Sir Alex United team that was a good 3-0, good to watch. Um, yeah, my second favorite match that I've been to is when we beat Chelsea 1-0. Not yeah 1-0, not the recent one, the one 16 years ago. So yeah, I was at that match. I remember everybody running onto the pitch, and I remember my dad being like, "You can't go onto the pitch," because he was like scared of like the legal repercussions or something like that. So he took us up to the edge of the advertising boards where the grass was starting, and he's like, "You can stay here and watch as people were just streaming past us onto the pitch." But that was like really magical. I remember chanting like "red, red, red, off, off, off" when I think it was Gallas was about to be sent off. Um, I remember the Drogba handball getting called back and like the entire crowd going crazy for that. And of course, Bo Morte's goal off his shin. Like everything about that day was really just a fun match to be a part of. And then number one match that I've attended is a little bit more recent was the Wembley match, 2018. My dad said at the beginning of the season, after we had just missed out on going to Wembley the season before that, he said that if they make it again this season, that he'll take me. And so they made it again, and he took me, and it was just like such a great day, from like top to bottom, and like the match itself was nervous, extremely nervous for like the last, I forget when Adoy got sent off, but ever since after then, um, was just really nervous. And then the final whistle blew, and everybody was just like hugging each other, crying tears of joy, stuff like that, and like having an entire half of the stadium filled with white was just like striking, and it was just iconic. And every picture that you see or video from that day that has that half of the stadium in it is just like brings back a happy memory.
Yeah, we'll go through your top three games sort of briefly, because actually, even if you do say that you've gone to games that you attended and not liked, or not necessarily, well, just your top three games, they're three really really good choices.
Yeah.
The Man United game that we won was it was really great. I don't think I've ever enjoyed playing a top sort of four team as
Hmm.
much as I enjoyed watching that game. And I think it's one of those days where everything sort of just kept compounding and made the day just a little bit more enjoyable as a fan. You know, Paul Scholes getting sent off,
Yeah.
and then Danny Murphy scoring, and then it's all just getting bigger and better and going that way. It was a very very enjoyable day.
Hmm.
Um, so I would agree that should be up there for quite a lot of people. The the 1-0 win over Chelsea, it probably is in my top three of Fulham games myself personally, just because it's the first time we've beaten them in forever,
Hmm.
and it's just a shame that we've had to wait 16 years to do it again.
Hmm.
But it was an absolutely special day for me personally. I think that I had taken an awful lot of stick from Chelsea mates, and half my family is split quite literally down the middle, in the sense that half my family support Fulham, half my family support Chelsea.
Hmm.
So it was nice for once to have the upper hand on the other half of my family. That was great. My stepdad's also a Chelsea fan,
Okay.
and I had a lot of fun when I got home from that match. So that was kind of cool. And Wembley speaks for itself in
Yeah.
terms of you know being special for football fans, not even Fulham fans. When seeing your team play at Wembley is every football fan's dream. I think if your team is a UK based team, you dream of seeing them play at Wembley.
Hmm.
As a kid, I had said this a few times on the show that I had a few dreams, a few like pipe dreams. Seeing Fulham play in the Premiership was the first one, and that was amazing. But see Fulham play at Wembley, let alone win at Wembley, was also on there. And yeah, it would be great if it was an FA Cup final. That would be amazing. But to see Fulham play that game was special, and I think that's one of the things, that it wasn't just great fun. It wasn't just great to see Fulham win at Wembley. It was special. It was such a special day. I think it's one of those ones. The white wall, as you say, was magic. It was just one of those things. I don't really remember seeing any other football club come to Wembley and sort of make their half of the stadium look sort of so together as we managed to do.
Hmm.
And it was absolutely special. And you know that feeling at full time was one of those feelings that I don't think I'm ever going to forget. I think you often get that relief feeling at full time whistle, especially when they're big games. But I think that the feeling of winning at Wembley is one that I won't ever forget in terms of that last half an hour
Yeah.
after Dennis Odoi got sent off was painful to watch. It was literally just it was wincing at almost every attack that Aston Villa had. So that relief, that pride, that sort of celebration, that jubilation at full time is something that it's really hard to explain. If people weren't at the match, it's really hard to explain how that
Hmm.
felt. So, for me, it was a combination of I was there with pretty much all of my family. Um, it was more sad for us that there was a couple of family members that we'd lost in the year or two before the game that didn't get to come. But you know, special occasion. Say you went with your dad, so you
Yes.
would have had the exact same feeling of sharing that with sort of family and having that. What was we'll talk a bit more about that day.
Hmm.
You might say you went with your dad, and it's a similar thing. How was that feeling for you seeing like Fulham play at Wembley as an American who maybe not? I'm not going to say you don't have that feeling of playing at Wembley, but it's not your national stadium as it was. So like
Yeah.
I've grown up watching big events and matches at Wembley. So what was it like for you?
So it was pretty like it was a whole different experience because this was the first time I had gone to see Fulham outside of Craven Cottage. Um, and so seeing them just being there, like it's fits so many fans in, and it's just such a different, like, such contrasting feelings from like being with like 20,000 of your friends that also support Fulham to now we've got at least twice as many, and they're all loud and they're all wearing white and it's bright and it's just like my dad and I were a few sections up, but we could still like take it all in, and it was just yeah, that entire day was just incredible.
I have a feeling that they might bleed in, but the last section in top three is your top three favorite Fulham moments and memories. Um, what are your favorite sort of your top three moments and memories?
So yeah, in third was just watching Fulham last season. I think I only missed two matches because I had FFC TV and I also had ESPN that did all the games that were on Sky. And so um, I just was watching sometimes at like a bunch of different crazy places, like at um, at an airport. I watched Fulham on like on a bus ride up to New York. I watched Fulham um, at work sometimes. Yeah, as I said before, I'd have them on my other monitor while I was doing my work. Occasionally glancing over, but always having Gentleman Jim and Jamie in my ear. Uh, just everything like with last season, it was just such a magical season, and even I could tell that from across the pond. And it's like one of my top three memories is last season, just because how I think part of it is how recent it is and how easy it is to recall, but just last season was so magical. Like the week we scored 19 goals, the 3-7 nils. It was just crazy because like I was like, you don't see teams win 7-0 and then you see it three times that season, and then going into the summer, I was like, well, that's over. And my local team, Philadelphia Union, also just put seven past DC like a month after the English season ended, and I was just like, oh, they're doing a Fulham, and um, and so it was just a good like everything about that season from like when we got promoted to when Mitro beat Tony's record with a penalty, to when Mitro beat the other record and we won the championship in the last minute, even though it was like the seventh goal and we knew we were champions already. He just broke the record and sent everybody crazy, and you could tell through Jim and Jamie's mic like how insane Craven Cottage was that day. It was just really fun to be able to watch all of that stuff and be able to follow along. And just even though I was across the pond, it just felt like I was a part of it. Yeah. And then second was my second favorite memory is Wembley, and just the whole day of it that I'd like to take you through. So we fly over we land the night before, and we go to the hotel that's right next to the stadium, was where we were staying. And the day of, we get up, we get our shirts on, and I had to tell my dad not to wear his. I think he had a red and black top from the season before, um, and so I just had to tell him like, no, we're doing the white wall thing. Just wear white. I wore, I think I have a Stefan Johansson jersey that has the Grosvenor Casino sponsorship on it. That's what I wore to that game. And so we both went up there. And as we were leaving the hotel, my dad realized we needed to print the ticket. So we go up to the business center. But the business center of that hotel was where Fulham were having their pregame meetings and like pre-match meal and stuff like that. And so there was a sign immediately off the elevator that are like, this is closed for a private event. Please go down to the lobby. And one of the Fulham staff um, was standing outside the elevator, like, go back in the elevator, please turn around. And we saw Dennis Adoy just walking past as he was like bouncing us out of the business office. And so we eventually got the tickets printed by the front desk. And then we went into the stadium and we accidentally went in the Villa end. And so we had to make our way around the stadium and convince security that we were actually Fulham supporters, even though we were both dressed in white and everything. And um, yeah, so then we got across and we went to our seats, and just the entire match happened and everything was great. It was just an incredible moment. As I said before, that was the second stadium I had seen Fulham live in. Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia will be the third. Um, but just everything about like the atmosphere there during the match, after the match, you get like relief and then joy. Like, we're keeping Sessegnon for at least another season. We're going to the Premier League. We're finally back after 4 seasons down. Just everything that's rushing into you and making you feel like really good. And then we went to one of the bars that was designated for Fulham afterwards, watched the Champions League final. My dad and I had a really good time. And yeah, that entire day was fantastic, magical, one of the best days I've ever had. It was just the entire experience. And then number one, the thing that can top that, from a strictly Fulham perspective, for me, was when I was a mascot of the club when I was young. In 2006, my parents told me that, like, for my birthday, I don't know how I got it. I suspect my parents might have paid the club for it, but for my birthday, they said I was going to be a mascot for the club. So it was a match against Charlton, and I got to meet the entire team. It was 2006, so it was a pretty kind of strange team. I think Zat Knight was the captain that day, but I got to meet the guy that would eventually be like my Fulham hero, which was Brian McBride. I got to take a picture with him. He signed. I brought my own Brian McBride kit for him to sign, and I still have that. Yeah, just everything. Just meeting him, meeting the rest of the team, having a kickabout right before the game on the pitch with the players. Uh, yeah, getting a signed ball with the entire team signing it, just everything was so cool. I remember it was 0-0 at halftime, and it was a Monday night game, I think. So it was getting a little bit cold out, and my mom was like, "You're getting cold. Just put this on." And I didn't want to put. It was my signed McBride jersey um, that I didn't want to put on because it was like a signed jersey. You don't want to like mess with that. But I put it on, and he scored like almost like a few minutes after I put it on, which was kind of crazy and funny and cool all at the same time. And just looking back on that day, it was just such an incredible experience.
Yeah, I think that's 3 great choices. Obviously, we spoke about Wembley. We don't
Yeah.
need to sort of go back into it. You know, that Wembley is Wembley, is it's magical. sort of as that is, and let's be honest, the only thing I would add to that is obviously Wembley being your second stadium ever to see Fulham play in is pretty special.
Hmm.
I think my second stadium to ever watch Fulham play in was like a really run down Brighton stadium. So
Mm.
that's probably not the
Yeah.
worst. And obviously being a mascot for a game is special. I never got to do it as a kid, but I was lucky enough that I once got to play on the pitch at half time for like the penalty shootouts they used to do, and they are sort of special sort of
Yeah.
memories and moments going through that way. And I think that they're three sort of really good choices in terms of they're quite personal, but they're also we can all relate. Anyone who's sort of been there, anyone who's been lucky to be a mascot will be able to relate
Hmm.
and how special that feels. Um, that's the sort of the end of the top, your top threes. The last bit of the show, TJ, which is my favourite bit of the show because it gets a real insight into the way that the person I'm speaking to gets to think in a way they appreciate footballers. Um, it's the FFC&Me Cult Hero Hall of Fame. We've had quite a few entrants in now, but who are you entering into the FFC&Me Cult Hero Hall of Fame?
So this might be a bit controversial just because of how much he's adored at the club, but I have to represent him being my favorite player, um, just him being one of an American and all of the reasons that like everybody at Fulham loves him. It's Brian McBride. I think he's one of my favorite players to ever put on a shirt. But I think it's might be controversial because people might think he doesn't apply to cult hero status. But I think when you look at just his numbers, I think he only had in the 4 seasons that he was here around 35 goal contributions, which is 28 goals and 7 assists is how it broke down. So he averaged around 7 a season, which in these days people are like 7 goals a season. You can't cut it in the Prem with that, but he could, and he just like brought so much professionalism, and he brought like every time he went up for an aerial duel, my dad would say he either won the header or he got fouled. And it just seemed to be that way, that he always won every header he went up for. He was just incredibly professional. It just felt like he scored a lot more than he did, to be honest. Um, but I think another thing, when you look outside of Fulham and you ask like an American soccer supporter that doesn't know that much about Fulham, or just Premier League supporter in general, like might kind of know who Brian McBride is, but they don't really recognize him on the same tier that maybe they would recognize Landon Donovan or Clint Dempsey or Tim Howard as American players in the Premier League. And I think he might be just behind Dempsey, but I definitely think he's in that tier of incredible players at that level. And I think even Premier League USA did a tweet of like, who's the best Premier League player of all time? And they listed like Dempsey, Donovan, Howard, obviously, but then they went into some more recent players like Pulisic or Tyler Adams, who I don't think kind of deserve to get that kind of mention ahead of McBride. And even like US soccer fans, I don't think give McBride a lot of the respect that he's due, especially like seeing how well he's done, not even just in England, but also I think he did pretty well in Germany as well, if my memory serves me correctly. But for Fulham, he was just like, he was my favorite player. He is my favorite player of all time, even though Tim Ream's given him a run for his money right now. Um, but just the way he carried himself, the way he played, he captained the club for a season. It's just everything about him. It was just like really fun to watch. An incredible guy to support, and like, yeah, when I met him, he was very gracious, very like accepting, and like let me take a few pictures with him as opposed to some of the other players in the dressing room. So yeah, he's just really nice guy, really great player. Absolutely think he should be included in this group.
I think that I know that when you were a bit trepidation in terms of like, does he count as a cult hero? I think he 100% does. It's true he doesn't ever sort of get spoke about in the level that I think he deserves to be. It takes a special footballer to get remembered by a club in certain ways. To have, he had his own bar in the old Riverside named after him, and there's a reason why players like that get stuff like that happen to them. Brian McBride. No, he wasn't the most prolific goal scorer. He wasn't, scoring goals week in, week out. But in terms of a player to have on your team, I don't think you're going to find someone who, gave 100% every week, literally put his body on the line every single week. He would, and your dad's correct. He would, if he went up for a header, he'd either win the header or he'd get fouled. We always used to say that if he went up for a header, he either used to win the header or he'd get kicked in the face. And he wouldn't care. He'd be happy just as long as we got the ball back. He'd be happy just as much. And I think that he 100% deserves to be in there. Brian McBride is a footballer that I absolutely love. I love Brian McBride. He's one of those people that I will never hear a bad word said about them. It's as simple as that. He's an absolute hero of mine. My little brother, who's 21 in a couple of weeks, he would have grown up. Brian McBride was playing when he first started going to games, and they're the sort of players that he saw and fell in love with watching. And I think Brian McBride, he should be included again. He's probably not the most technically gifted, but I couldn't care less. For a cult hero for me is somebody that is not necessarily the world's greatest player, but someone who you absolutely loved playing for your football club, and he has to be in there. So Brian McBride easily in the Cult Hero Hall of Fame, and I'm happy to say that he has been added. TJ, thank you very much for your time, mate. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Just one more time before we leave, just shout out your group and where anyone can find you if they want to get hold of the group.
So thank you again for having me. It's been a pleasure. And if you're looking to get us in contact with us, whether it be just to join the group for match days, or if you're coming over for that match in July against Brentford, feel free to reach out. You can find us on Twitter at Fulham, that's PHULHAM, as well as on Facebook, Fulham spelled with a PH as well, and Fulham in Philadelphia after that. Or you can reach out to us on Gmail. Our Gmail is Fulham, FULHAM, Philadelphia @gmail.com. Thank you.
Excellent stuff. Thanks very much, mate.
Thank you.